All right, welcome to 5,000 Miles. We're here reviewing Rick and Morty Season 8, Episode 5. Very excited about it. How's it going over there in Hawaii, Vince?
It's going pretty great, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, word on the street is you're all alone and living your own life these days. Vince's wife's on
um,
vacation.
my wife's on vacation, so I got the whole house to myself.
Okay, cool. Well, I definitely thought it was a good episode. I liked it more than last week, although I did like last week as well, but I'd like this one a little better. You got a really cool adventure that's just taking place in and of what Rick and Morty are doing out in space. They go to rob kind of a spaceship because the people are in a sleep state. They make a mistake. They get stuck on the ship and then have to pose as rich and poor people to try and rob these guys, and the whole adventure plays out from there. What were your feelings on the episode? How strong do you think it was?
It made me feel the same way I felt last week, where I feel like it's not the strongest episode of this season so
Yeah.
far, but it's definitely right up there with like the B tiers, and I definitely thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I may have enjoyed the one last week a little bit better, but
Yeah.
this one, I don't know, man. It's going to be a toss up because I felt like this one felt a little bit better on the rewatch also.
Yeah, I've only gotten a chance to watch it once, but I thought that it was interesting that they were kind of making an obvious singular point about class war. The whole episode was kind of centered around that point, right? Like when Morty goes, "We're makers, doesn't that make them takers?" And then just little plays on rich poor, the way that things are so unfairly set up. My favorite, I think, quote from the episode was naively benefiting from systemic inequity. And
That
I
sounds
thought
about right.
they don't usually go like the South Park route and try and make a point, but in a weird kind of comical way. Did you feel like they were doing that, like making a comment on class structure?
I don't think Rick and Morty needs to be making that sort of comment because I it's pretty much implied where they would stand on something like that. I don't think it was the main gist of the episode, but I think it set up a nice little background for them to have some sort of stakes in the episode. It reminded me of like Titanic, where you have all the rich people up top, and then you have all the lower class like workers down and everything,
Or the wall in Solar Opposites?
or the wall and solar opposites. Also,
Interestingly enough, we got our first clip from the credits in an episode, right?
as soon as they put the pointy ears on, I was
Totally.
like, okay. I had a feeling that it was going to be them on this ship, but once they put the pointy ears on, I was like, okay, this is going to be from the opening theme credits.
And it also
Which,
proves that there's no way to know what the goddamn episode's going to be about from the clip they give us in the credits. It's just impossible.
yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
I was never worried about there being any sort of type of spoiler element from seeing those
Right.
clips in the credits. When we first start any season and we see the clips in the credits, we don't know which
Yeah.
ones are going to make appearances in the show. That
Right.
was one that most people felt was going to be from an actual episode this season.
So did you get a kick out of the kind of bloodlust joke that they make right out of the gate with the podcast thing?
But this podcast won't cash in on their specific and particularly gruesome group decapitation.
Too bad. Someone else will.
It's a big market, man.
Like, Morty, you got to chime into a podcast that has no scruples.
I thought it was funny that they started off listening to like a true crime podcast because, true crime podcasts are so big. And so there's been multiple times in the past where we've seen them in the spaceship, which is like their mode of transportation. So it makes sense on long drives that they would be listening to some sort of podcasts. There was another episode where I think Summer was in the car with them. Summer was in the ship with them, and they were listening
Yeah.
to a podcast also.
No, no, yeah, definitely.
In the genre of true crime podcasts, there's always going to be the ones that try not to be as exploitative, but then there's other ones. Then there's other ones that like lean right into it, and so we understand that Rick would be into a podcast with less scruples.
It struck me as a great example of just our Rick and our Morty's dynamic playing out, right? Because essentially what
Right.
happens here is Morty accidentally sabotaging a half-assed robbery plan from Rick. And that really is classic Rick and Morty.
It's definitely right down the middle, Rick and
Yeah,
Morty.
for
Because
sure.
this reminded me of, I like how when Rick was when they were getting in the tubes, Rick was saying to Morty, everything that happens from here on out is your fault.
Or don't and get thrown out an airlock. You did this to yourself, Morty. Everything that happens after this is your fault.
You're gonna wish you were one of those Oak Point kids after I get through with you.
It's on you.
Because we've seen this dynamic so many times where Rick is going to do something, Morty has some sort of issue with it, and Morty ends up making everything worse just by instead of just listening to Rick.
Yeah, like
Where
the snake episode's a good example of that, right? Where Morty caused the whole snake thing.
Morty did cause the whole snake thing. There's also the episode where Rick just wanted to go to Blitz and Chips, but Morty had to try to save the fart, and Rick was telling him the whole time. There's so many times where Rick is like, just leave it alone, and Morty still never learns his lesson.
Um,
Yeah, this was the first time that we've seen Rick straight up do some sort of robbery, because we've seen them go to a ship before, but that was an abandoned ship that still had like a help beacon going, and that was where they ended up meeting Unity, if you remember.
I do, yeah.
But this wasn't them going to like loot an abandoned ship. This was that Rick straight up going onto a cryo ship. And I think that's the first time that we've ever seen that. And I was actually surprised that Morty was willing to go along for it in the first place.
Well, technically, Morty technically said, "I'm okay with taking candy from a baby, but I'm not going to take the stroller," or however he put that.
Tell me with these charges. This will be quick. They got fast countdowns.
Rick, I'm fine with taking candy from a baby, but I draw the line at blowing up the stroller.
What the hell, Morty? We're not literally robbing babies.
He wasn't okay with blowing up the stroller.
With blowing up the stroller, he'll rob the baby, but he's not blowing up the stroller.
I feel like at that point, if you're in for a penny, in for a pound.
I think it's official that we can say that the writers in the writers' room, they like the word Schwanz.
I don't hear Rick speaking Yiddish very often.
Oh boy, talk about a cryo crick in the neck. Hope my Schwanz still works.
But was there another time where he said Schwanz?
I need to look it up. But Morty says, remember when they had that fabulous abs thing that they were joking about, like the Night People episode?
Yeah.
He's doing a commercial for the abs episode, and he's talking about some product where he goes, "It's good on your schwanz." And that's like the commercial read that he reads is something for like, like baby powder that's good for, it's good on your schwanz. And Morty's reading it. But that term schwanz is so specific and peculiar, they must think that's fucking funny to say it again.
Well, Yiddish words are always funny.
Yeah, for sure. So any little funny things jump right out to you that you think are notable? I got a couple more.
I thought the whole race sequence was really funny. It kind of lent itself to this sort of like farcical sequence where I wasn't expecting to see something like that, but it was fun because the whole like Rick is like, "Hey, we're having a space race." He seems really excited about it, and it turns into this farce, very much in the vein of movies like Rat Race and It's a Mad Mad World. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those movies, but it's basically that premise of there's a whole bunch of money somewhere, and then there's like this mad scramble for a bunch of people to go try to get that money, and then comedy always ensues.
Gotcha. It kind of reminded me of the Handy Car South Park episode as well.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely had like a wacky racers type of vibe as well. So it was fun to see that. It was fun to see them doing this race through the casino planet, which is where I'm at right now. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm right outside the orbit of Blackjack 9.
Ah, that's good. How's the weather?
Pretty nice. It's a little cold up here out in space, but I can't wait to get back down onto the planet and do a little gambling.
It's fucking 101 in Philly right now.
Ah, rough.
Yeah, it's cooking. Did you think it was interesting that Rick kind of started to like his parents? It was almost like Cartman once like liking something. It's like he's so cynical he can't have feelings for anything or anybody. But for some reason, these parents they appealed to Rick.
I feel like this is where our discussion is going to get a little bit deep here into Rick's character, because it was really interesting to see that dynamic of we've seen Rick be a father and a grandfather, but we've never seen Rick as a son. We've never seen Rick's parents. And so seeing him with this like son to parents dynamic, and how much he like took to that, it makes me wonder what his relationship with his parents are going to be like, and also why the writers have gone this long without introducing anything about Rick's parents. We've never seen them in flashbacks. We've never seen them still alive.
Or even a description of like how he was treated by them or what his relationship was like with them in order to make him how he is. None of that's ever been explored.
Right. I mean, the only time we've ever seen anything with Rick as a kid was in the Bird Person Spotless Mind episode at the very end when he goes back to his old memory of being a kid.
Yeah, actually, they we get a character out of it. Like the younger version of Rick is, I think he actually speaks with him.
Right. Yes. And so it was, yeah, man, it makes me really wonder, like, what are the writers? I don't know if they're intentionally avoiding bringing up Rick's parents, but it'll be interesting to see someday. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit of another look at what Rick's relationship was with his parents. But as for now, it was really fun to see how easily he bonded with Doug and Carrie.
Yeah, he's like looking at the picture. Like it's like almost like he was starved for some kind of connection of that nature because the cynical Rick would not side with the takers. You know, the fucking vault goes to open up and it's like, thank you for being rich. These
Yeah.
are people who Rick would typically, I don't think, side with. But because they were kind to him, and then we find out that their little brat kid was a piece of shit.
Yeah, we know that Rick wouldn't side with these people because we saw in the Purge episode that he helped Arthritia.
Arthritia, yeah.
Arthritia. So in the episode with Arthritia, in the Purging episode, we see that Rick finds out that these people are abusing their societal power. And so he puts on a suit of, like an armored suit, and they go and they kill all those people.
Well, I guess he was forced into this situation because of Morty dropping the bombs out and waking them all up. So this was maybe Rick, just taking it as it comes. He wasn't planning on
or
befriending these
also
people.
just kind of leaning into it because Morty was part of the disenfranchised group, and Morty really did that to himself. So I could see Rick leaning into it just to troll Morty as well.
Well, I thought it was funny that he kind of got his ass kicked by Morty out in the hallway.
It was funny to see Morty kick Rick's ass.
Laying it.
Give me the car keys!
No, we're not leaving!
Yes, we are, you pretty shit!
Damn! Chachoko's giving that old rich kid a piece of his mind!
Give them to me, you takey scum!
So he let Morty win that fight.
He just didn't feel like fighting back. Morty gets them all to tear the Matrixy type. That was very Matrixy, don't you think? That little plug in the back of their heads.
It was also that was a great gag where she pulls the chip out of her neck and then she falls over and dies, and you think she's dead, and then she gets up and realizes that the chips don't actually kill them when you take it out.
Chachako is living proof it won't.
Wait, stop!
Chaco killed Tibbs. Should we tell someone?
Listen, I'm not who you...
Chachako, you're an idiot. And a goddamn hero!
Yeah, that was actually really funny, yeah.
There's two types of Rick and Morty episodes. There's like the lore heavy episodes where there's stuff that ties to the larking stories of Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
And then there's like the like goofy adventure episodes. A really great blend of the two so far this season. I love the relationship that the zoologist guy had with the monkey Lizzie.
Right.
And then they go on the space race around the casino planet. Everybody ends up, most of the people that go after the money end up dying, but the zoologist guy crashes and finds a new monkey named Lizzie. And then we get to see them at the casino at the end.
Right. And so that actually brings up an interesting point that I wanted to say from here on out, I want you, because I do it now. I just started right before the tag shows up and you're watching the episode for the first time, pause it and try and guess what the fucking tag is.
Tag is. I do remember one of my biggest pulls was the Churi episode, the churro that they left
Oh, so good.
on the planet. I
Yeah.
forget exactly what episode that was from, but I do remember pausing it and being like, the tag's going to be the churro.
I want to start trying to guess it. Trying to guess what little goofy unresolved element exists in this episode that they're going to fucking flesh out a little bit here at the end.
Yeah. So, did you guys guess the tag this week? Let us know in the comments.
So, I mean, yeah, we get to the end, and what have we learned? We've learned nothing. We're going to go
We've
try
learned
again.
nothing.
Cryoship detected. Class medical.
They typically have some pretty good drugs in those.
Okay, but 5 minutes tops, and you can't hog all the drugs this time.
So,
Yeah, and that's a common theme where it just gets to the end and they should have learned something, but they go fuck it and then just to go do something stupid again. It's happened many times before.
I also like to see that this time Morty's a little bit more open to going to the medical ship. And also, he said this time Rick can't hog all the good drugs as well. So Morty's in it for the drugs.
Yeah, that's more Summer's MO.
I love that we saw this the casino on Blackjack 9. This was the second time this season. It's never been introduced in the series before, but this was the second time this season that we saw that. Because if you remember correctly, there was the one older, kind of like fatter Morty in episode 3 when they were dropping all the different Mortys off on their respective planets.
Yeah.
That was the same casino that the gambler Morty got dropped off at.
Oh, no shit. No, that's a really good pull. I didn't notice that. Now that they know they've got 12 full seasons to complete and no more Rick Prime, and the Citadel being kind of scrambled in terms of how often we can revisit it, maybe they're doing a little world building, even with minor things like that.
Yeah, it's fun to see them doing stuff like that. I really loved seeing them go back to the Citadel, but it looks like the Federation is going to be the big bad, because that was something that we've had from the beginning of the season, or from the beginning of the series up until last season. Rick Prime was sort of like the big bad. There was like Evil Morty and there was Rick Prime.
Well, yeah, it was Evil Morty and then Rick Prime was behind him. And now, I mean, at least Evil Morty's still out there as a character. He doesn't necessarily need to be a big bad, but he is a great character to be able to revisit in whatever capacity they want. I low-key love Evil Morty.
I don't think he was sort of the big bad at one point, but not really. I mean,
no.
He helped Rick, and they've worked together at this point, so they're more unlikely allies than they are enemies at this point.
Well, especially because of how strong Evil Morty is. He's no joke in terms of what he's capable of. You could argue he's as capable as Rick, as C-137 Rick.
We know that that the Federation is still an issue because we saw Space Beth, fighting against the Federation.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see where they decide to take the rest of the series.
I did want to make a comment on what you were saying about how these goddamn internet Rick and Morty fans, they like lore or they like adventures. It's made up of both. Okay? It's made up of both. So we don't need to decide which ones are better. Yes, I prefer lore episodes, but that doesn't mean that I want them all to be that. You know, you need both.
Yeah. No, it's that the show always benefits when it's a nice blend of both. And I think that's why it has such a broad appeal as well, is because the people that like the goofy one-off episodes like this get what they want. And so do the people that are looking for something with a little bit more of a through line.
Okay, so we are halfway through the damn season, and I don't want you to overthink it or anything, but rank the 5 episodes in order from weakest to strongest, just using the numbers. Episode 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I think episode 3 was my favorite.
Yeah.
Followed immediately by episode 1, which I loved.
Yeah.
Then episode 2. So we got 3, 1, 2.
Yep.
And then such a tight race too for.
You already said you liked this one, or you already said you liked last week's better.
I do feel like I'm gonna have to say 5-4.
All right. Oh, you're putting okay. So you're putting last week's as the weakest. So we're in agreement, except I'll flip flop the top two. So mine would go 1, 3, 2, 5, 4.
Okay, so for you, it was the Matrix Morty's Got an Eye for a Deal.
The strongest one, but I will echo your sentiments in saying that the episode 3 and episode 1, really not a huge difference between how strong they are. I love them both, but I'll give the first one the edge. And maybe it's just because I was so damn
Both
excited
so
for the
good.
season to get started.
When you see the first episode of the season after waiting so long for the season to come back, it's like you just want it to be good so bad. And
Yeah,
they delivered with that first episode. So
you're so empty from Rick and Morty, you know, how long it's been that it fills you right up. Or like when James Franco's character starts drinking that pond water after he escapes from having his hand stuck in the 127 hours. So, anyways, let us know what your rankings are, the first 5 episodes of the new season so far, as we head into the second half of Rick and Morty. And be sure to stay tuned because we're going to start doing movies. I think we're going to review Sinners. We're going to start doing TV shows. We're going to talk about the end of Handmaid's Tale when we get to the end of that. So we do have some other TV and movie stuff that's going to be coming up in the future. It's not all Rick and Morty. So yeah, check in for that, and we'll certainly be on here next week when we watch episode 6.
Let us know what your favorite parts of the episode were down in the comments, and we'll see you next week. And that's the way the news goes.
Lick my balls.